Yay! Hello. Hi. I have made it. A million years late, but I have made it. Okay, maybe not a million years. A little over 10 minutes late, but still, I'm here. Yay. Hello. Ooh. Okay, so I'm live on Twitch and on YouTube and on Instagram. Yay! This is exciting. I finally figured out how to set all that up. But yeah, I wanted to have a conversation today about Emerald Fennel's Wuthering Heights and look at some commentary that has been going around when it comes to the character of Heathcliff, because I feel like it's pretty important. Oh, look at that. Oh. Let me see. Try and okay, how do I share this with people? Oh, never mind. Curious. Okay. What if I how do I share this? Check. Okay, never mind. That maybe didn't help the way I thought it would. That's okay. I will do my handy dandy texting. Okay. Cool. I did the thing. That's exciting. All right, so I wanted to talk about Wuthering Heights and the character of Heathcliff, because I have been seeing, as I'm sure others have seen, that there has been a lot of discourse, like a lot, around the new adaptation of Hello! Hi, Cookie! Hello, hello! Yes, I am live. Yes, I'm live on... Oh, Shadow, what happened? It is, indeed. Hello. Hi. I am live on Twitch and on YouTube and on Instagram because that's super exciting. And I'm very happy about that. I got that to work. It's so low. Oh, no. Oh, is it? I wonder, are you watching on, is it because you're watching? I don't know why it would be low, actually. My internet is literally right here. The little box is like right here. Come on. Man. I guess my only question then is it different on a different platform? Let me do a little check myself. See what happens. No, don't try me. What do you mean? Log into Meh. Oh, no. Okay. I wonder, am I also low quality on other things? Oh, I can't spell. Oh, I really can't spell. Aha! No, I'm so low quality. This is so sad. Oh, man. It looks nice from my end. Oh, so I need to not stream on all 3 platforms. Okay. Maybe I can... What should I not stream? Is there a way to remove one? Is anyone on Instagram right now? If not, I will remove it. I'll try removing Instagram, see if that helps. Okay. Is this better? Oh my gosh. Let me try one more time. Okay, it's a little better. Sort of. Kind of. A little bit. Guys, this is ridiculous. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm only streaming on Twitch and YouTube now. Oh, this makes me sad. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Cookie. Thank you. I actually, I didn't straighten my hair today. I actually normally straighten my hair before any live or anytime, almost anytime I'm seen on camera, or I'll brush it out. Because I got feedback back when I used to do live streaming for a particular company that sometimes my hair looked messy. So I got into the overcorrecting habit of straightening it, which is not a good move. So I'm slowly learning to let my curls come back and exist because they're actually kind of corkscrewy naturally. Yes, it is. It is. And that actually does kind of work into the theme of what we're talking about today, because it's essentially about erasure and how sometimes comments can be misdirected, or the intention of a comment can be unconscious in its effect. So, like, for example, my hair looking messy if it's like a second day curl day, where anybody with curly hair knows this, like your hair doesn't always maintain its curls exactly the day that it was when you just walked out of the I'm at 2K. Have I gone back to being visible relatively? Okay, cool. Yay! Thank you for working through this with me. I appreciate it so much. I'm in HD. Ooh, that's exciting. Okay. So yeah, I oh, I'm so sorry, Shadow. I missed your first message. Let me look. Okay, so my piece. Oh. Instant judgment. Instant judgment for this company. I'm sorry, Shadow. I mean, I'm sure that I know nothing technologically, obviously, because I'm like, oh yeah, I guess streaming through 3 platforms might be tough on my internet. But here we go. I hope that gets resolved really quickly and it doesn't leave you without your PC for too long, because I know that can really mess up everything about your day-to-day and all the things. So I really do hope that works out quickly. I'm so sorry that's happening. Yeah, Googie, I'm sure. I'm sure it is. That's actually one reason I was really interested about this topic, because I know that there are an incredible amount of super fantastic Romani creators all over the internet that have done a beautiful job just being themselves and being representative of our community as well. But, you know, it's tough when you're part of an ethnic minority. You're often required to everything that you ever do is supposed to be a example of your community and reflects on your entire community. So Yes, yes, Gogi, yes, I am. Yes, I am. Um, and that's a really big reason I wanted to talk about this conversation surrounding Heathcliff and Wuthering Heights, because Heathcliff is one of the only characters of color that is represented in canon literature. So, um, Emily Brontës' novel Wuthering Heights came out in 1847, and it's actually set 46 years in the past, in 1801. And it follows a kind of multiple, almost 30-year uh, like passage of time from the like the late 1700s until the early 1800s, and follows the stories of two families living in Yorkshire on the moors of England, um, at this time period. That's Fair Shadow. Oh, Cookie, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. But one thing that I remember reading Wuthering Heights when I was quite young. I read a lot of literature far younger than I had the capacity to understand the nuance of that literature, because I was one of those bookworms who just would read anything I could get my hands on, and I thought it would be right up my alley. And I remember thinking, walking away from that as like, I think I was. Oh, Gogi, yes, 100%. I would love to have a conversation about Sacha Baron Cohen in the future, because that person, the, the, the anger is real. The anger is so real. So for anybody who doesn't know, just a quick bit of context. Sacha Baron Cohen is the Borat actor who, during the process of making Borat, went to a small community, a small town in, oh no, I can't remember. Was it Bulgaria? And I think it was Eastern Europe, and to a traditionally oppressed and oppressed community of Romani people, and told the population, the community, that he was going to be doing a documentary about their lives. And then Kazakhstan. Wait, really? What? Oh gosh. Well, okay. That's, and again, another important thread to what we're talking about today is the fact that when you are an ethnically ambiguous person, you often get erased from the narrative or reassigned to whatever makes the people assigning you the most comfortable. So, in I'm going to, continuing with the Sacha Baron Cohen, pretty little tangent. Um, he went with his entire production team, told this community, who, mind you, is constantly under impression from the environment that they live in, from the governing bodies that have the ability to obstruct really important ability, like the parts of their lives. Hey, hello, hello, hello. How are you? I'm glad you're here. I hope you're doing so well. Today we're going to be talking about Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights. I am going on a very short tangent, actually, because Gogi brought up post-Soviet, yes, brought up a situation where a Romani community was very negatively affected by the film industry. And I feel like that does play quite a bit into the conversation that we're going to be having today. So, for a bit of context, I am Roma or Romani. I'm part of the Romani for the community, Roma for my person, like if you're talking about an individual person. There are further kind of terms to differentiate between different clans or vistas of Romani people, based on where we settled in the world, because we actually have lived all over. We are in so many more countries than you may think, and have managed to survive and thrive in our own ways all over the world, and also have been very, very influential in so many components of invention, music, um, engineering, farming techniques, like there's so many things that we have done because we have been around for a very long time. But we are often forgotten by non-Romani people when it comes down to history and the narrative. And that is largely because we are a forced nomadic ethnicity or communities. We were we originated in India and were either sold or gifted to the Ottoman Empire by the Sultan of India. And that can be traced through our language. We actually have our own language. And we have a lot of closed practices to non-Romani people, and I've learned to be isolated for our own survival. But we have been, due to the slave trade, we're shuttled around all over the world. One thing that's actually, yes, exactly, Gogi. One thing that's actually pretty interesting is like when when you look at us on a genetic level, we present as can be a range of different, I guess, physical presentations. We can have blonde hair, blue eyes, very pale skin, or we can look very traditionally Indian. We can look anywhere in between. And that has led to a lot of our erasure. But one thing you cannot change is our genetics. And it is very easy if you do any kind of genetic like testing on us, any of us, it's quite clear our genetic path. It has maintained itself extraordinarily strongly because of the fact that we have had to maintain isolation for such a long time in order to survive. Now, there are oh, yes. Well, it makes sense. It does. There's a lot of genetic, I guess you could say, involvement based on where we were either enslaved or stayed for the longest amounts of time. Um, well, I like Dracula. Ah, man. I never thought about that. I will say in the actual in Bram Stoker's Dracula, the one group of people who kept telling, oh, what's his name? The main character, whatever you do, please, for the love of God, stay away from this person. He's awful. Is the Romani people. Like, we can't get away from him, but you can. That that was a pretty important component of that book too. Um, but of course, even in that book, we were not depicted in a positive light for sure. We were always, we are often depicted in whatever is the most convenient negative explanation at the time. So, for example, when we were talking about Sacha Baron Cohen did the Borat movie where he actually, oh, it was Kazakhstan. Yes, it was Kazakhstan. He went to a tiny, small town in, I think it was Kazakhstan, and to a Romani community. And mm, actually, probably. Probably. Gogi, that's a good question. We're gonna get into that as well. Um, and Ellie, I haven't watched the film in of itself. I have watched and read a lot about it because part of I was torn. I was very torn. Some of the things that I read about it made me feel the ick. Um, on a deep level, just because they kept talking about how much they wanted the walls to look sweaty, and I was like, oh, no, no, I'm good. But at the same time, there's other very sincere critiques that I do have that come from the adaptation that don't necessarily mean that you have to watch through the entire movie to understand their issues. And fortunately for me, there's a lot of people who already have, so they were able to explain quite a bit about that film that allowed me to, through seeing quite like multiple different perspectives about the film allowed me to see the issues. But also, if you have read the book, which I have, and then you look at who was cast, it becomes pretty clear and pretty quickly where the issue is. So we're oh my gosh. Unless you're watching Buffy, in which case we are the only people who have ever been able to get a murderous villain to take accountability for their actions. I don't know. We present it a lot of different ways. We're very convenient in a storytelling sense for non-Romani storytellers. But okay, so with Sacha Baron Cohen, he went to a small town. It was a Romani community. He told the people of that town he was doing a documentary about them and their lives and their communities and also their hardships for living as an oppressed minority in an area that has rampant racist bigotry against Romani people, as well as legal support for Romani racism. So instead, what he did is he took all these videos and did all took all this footage of the Romani community, and even highlighted one of the woman there, and was like, "Oh, this is my sister." And none of them spoke English. They didn't understand what he was saying, and he purposely did not have his translator communicate with them effectively. Purposely kept them in the dark about what the actual movie was about. And instead, in the film, he uses them as a way to showcase how bad the character he's portraying is, because he comes from a community of people who are all like, he portrays them as incestuous and promiscuous and as sex workers when they're not, and completely just portrays them in ways that are very highly offensive on purpose, because he doesn't care. He didn't care that he was affecting this community, because nobody was going to care if he did. And so there's this heartbreaking footage of the community gathering to watch the film, thinking they were going to be positively highlighted, and what they got instead was just racist rhetoric, racist stuff. It was bad. It was bad. Thank you, Ellie. I think that'd be amazing. They are, Gogi. They are. So one of the things I wanted to talk about in this conversation today with Wuthering Heights is the depiction of Heathcliff through the adaptions that have happened since this book started to be adapted. It's actually, interestingly, one of the most adapted books in from like that canon era literature of the 1800s in Hollywood. And it has been adapted multiple times. And it is very rarely adapted accurately. To this day, there is only one adaptation that actually portrays Heathcliff as a person of color. And that was a 2011 adaptation that was done by, I'll look this up real quick. Oh, sorry for the typing sounds that are about to ensue. But there we go. Yes, this was done by books. What are the words? Okay, there we go. Andrea Arnold. There we go. And they actually had, let's see, James Howson play Heathcliff. James Howson is a mixed race. What? Oh, yes, the cat. What? No, the cat. But is a mixed race actor, um, who I believe is. Let me look into his background real quick. Oh, come on, words. He is. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. Information. Well, that wasn't very enlightening. Okay, well, he's a British and I'm surprised that this is not as easy to find as I thought it would be. Okay, but either way, he is a biracial black man actor, and it's the only time that there has ever been a depiction of Heathcliff as a character of color. And even though in the book, I actually, Princess Weeks did an amazing deep dive about this specific topic. And she actually looked at in the book and like highlighted and showed how by page 3 you find out that Heathcliff is of color. Now in the book, he's the first way that he's referred to is as, I'm going to say it, but I would hope that in the future people we can move away from using this word, but he's referred to as a gypsy. Now gypsy is a term that is largely reclaimed by Romani people, but it is a slur. There are people who are Roma who do refer to themselves that way, but it is a legal definition and it is a slur. And it was used to dehumanize us, as also because especially in England, people and in Western Europe, many people did not understand where we came from, because we actually, a lot of us did travel north from Egypt to a lot of the Western European countries, but we're not from Egypt. We may have Egyptian to some degree in our genetic background from having been there as an enslaved population or as a traveling population trying to escape persecution for quite some time, but we are not Egyptian. We come from India, but we are also a very unique ethnic minority because we are a combination of all the places that we are from. Like if you took us back to India, we have connection, but the land that we were from is not it's not easy to identify exactly like which towns, which villages, which area we are all from, because we were gathered en masse and shipped out. And that is what essentially is what started us as a ethnic minority, because we were separated from our homelands and then had to survive over time. And that does put us in a very uncomfortable place for people who are used to national identity, because we don't have a country. And so that does confuse a lot of people. Now, there's another really important thing when it comes to Romani people, is that because we have, for our own survival, had to travel all over the world in order to find spaces where we could survive. And we were often cast out of any of the places that we tried to settle. There's now, generations of stories, books, newspapers, all kinds of media, plays, from the Middle Ages onward, that have depicted us as the easy scapegoat for any problem that happens. Was not on. Yes, absolutely, Brent, 100%. 100%. I am actually a product of that. So for context, I am a Romani person who was separated from my Romani background and my Romani family very, very early and adopted by Americans and my American family. I love them deeply. I was raised in the US primarily, and I've always known I was Roma. It was a huge reason of why I was even allowed to be adopted at the time I was. It was a huge reason I was in an orphanage in the first place. It's also a huge reason I survived that orphanage. The orphanage I was in, the majority of the children in my age range did not survive. So there is a lot of social commentary that is quite negative about Romani people. But let's get back to Heathcliff. Let's get back to Wuthering Heights and why this matters. So, I think we've established pretty effectively that, yes, Gogi, that's a great term, social leprosy. We have been deemed, thank you, Brent, thank you. We have been deemed as undesirable to a large portion of many of the communities that we have tried to settle in or coexist in. Now, there's a lot of community, like a lot of Roma have found places to call home. It's not like we're consistently still traveling from place to place to place to place. There are many, many Roma communities all over the world that have thrived and found ways to really integrate into the spaces that they have settled. And, there's a huge Roma population in Los Angeles, where I reside. There is a Roma populations all over the Americas. There's Roma populations all through Europe and West Asia. And, oh, Gogi, that's a good question. Ooh. Frustrated. Deeply frustrated, because they actually have way more than 2 characters that are supposed to be Roma. But anyways, yes. So just for context, Gogi did ask about how I feel about Marvel handling Romani characters like the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Technically, maybe even Magneto, but it depends, because his character has been retconned and rewritten so many times. But either way, I would love to go deep into that conversation. I think that's a good conversation we should definitely have in the future in general about Romani characters, because I also want to talk about Nightwing, y'all. I need to talk about Nightwing. I know it's different. It's DC, but still. Yeah. Oh, Ellie, that's hit the nail on the head. Yes. A lot of Romani characters are either super, super sexualized, or we are, if we're presented in a positive way, we are rewritten from being Romani to being something else. And on top of that, a lot of our depictions are as these exotic fortune tellers, or as thieves, children eaters, kidnappers, dangerous. Actually, Esmeralda in The Hunchback of Notre Dame is a Romani character that Disney, at least, portrayed in a relatively positive light, but she's one of the only characters in mainstream media that many of us can point to and say, oh, look, Romani character. Am I going to say that she's the best depiction that there is? No. We can have a conversation about that too, in a future. Ellie, yeah. In a future stream, I will absolutely love to have a conversation about Romani characters in media in general, and then we can go into all of that, because there's many characters that have been radically, how do I say this, have been portrayed in whatever stereotype is the most convenient for the story, and isn't necessarily reflective of the community. Also, Ellie said you can't stop me from sexualizing Nightwing. I will say Nightwing as an adult, I think a lot of people have have thoughts about him and his physique, and I um, respect that to the most degrees it has been, I think, primarily respectful versus being a kind of racialized thing here. So I do appreciate the Nightwing love. Yeah, they did, Gogi. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the reason that Esmeralda from Hunchback of Notre Dame is kind of a contentious character within the community, because one thing that does happen in any um, community of color is when we're getting compared to whiteness and colonial whiteness, we always have the model minority myth. And the model minority myth is the idea that there are certain characteristics and habits and presentations that a person can take on to be seen as acceptable, and that generally requires that anyone of that community has to present themselves without fault based on the social mores and senses of right and wrong of the community that's judging them at the time. So yeah, no. Oh, Ellie. Oh, shots fired. But yes, agree 100%. Oh. Anyways, but yeah, so there's definitely a history of in media of Romani characters getting portrayed as either a fantasy that's a learning opportunity for a character. Hunchback of Notre Dame, Esmeralda is a great example. She's hopelessly in love with, don't even remember his name, the blonde guy, and hopelessly in love. And she's also a child in the actual book. Um, and she serves as a way for the male leads to be able to essentially grow and change and then choose a socially acceptable white partner instead, while the Romani character tragically dies, which happens a lot. And Romani characters are by far the only communities of color that are used that way. Really, Gogi? So that's another component of this conversation. Gogi said the only place I get like kind of like identified racially is at an airport. Um, I've definitely been through that one. But I think one thing that happens a lot with Romani people is that because of our history of forced enslavement, actually, earlier this past week, we celebrated 170 years since the ending of our enslavement in Romania. Now, that took a longer time afterwards for a lot of the laws that protected slaveholders from getting abolished, and it was still legal to hunt us for many years after that. But oh, Gogi, yeah, I'm so sorry. That's yeah, yeah. Um, yes, Ellie. Actually, I love that you brought up Doctor Doom. Doctor Doom is a Romani character, and his ultimate goal is to create a utopia. And then he is such a product of generational trauma that he doesn't know what to do with his utopia once he gets it. So he messes it all up. Um, yes. Yes, Brant, we were. And to a degree, we still are. Up until, even right now, legislation is still getting passed throughout Eastern Europe and other places, even in the United States, actually, that restricts our movement, protects people from getting in trouble if they commit crimes against us. In Ukraine, there were there were Romani people who lived in Ukraine who were tied to poles and even children, like their faces were sprayed with paint and other chemicals, and they were taunted and harassed by Russian soldiers and by Ukrainian soldiers. So racism is never acceptable, Gogi. No matter how little it is, it's never acceptable. Yes. Yes. So, but Doom is characterized as a villain. Okay, so anyways, I think that's a conversation we definitely should be having in the future, because I can see there's a lot of characters to bring up, a lot of context when it comes to Romani characters in media and in film. But today's conversation is about Wuthering Heights. So, yeah, that's true, Googie. Ooh, okay. We're definitely gonna need to have this conversation. We totally do. I love that. I wanna know all the things. I wanna know all the things. But I wanted to talk about this newest adaptation of Wuthering Heights because of the fact that what is going on with Jacob Elordi getting cast in 2026 as Heathcliff is really frustrating, because it feels representative of a greater issue that we're having in the United States right now, which is one, the erasure of DEI and a misidentification of what that even means, and two, we're watching our country slide into, and it's already there, but into a very, very authoritarian structure. You know, we have people who are being hunted and put into these camps. We don't really know what's happening to them in those camps. They're getting paid by the head to have people there. So it's very frustrating, because we basically have this group of people who are very undertrained and encouraged to try and get as many people as possible to put into these camps to deport them. They're not really checking papers. They're not checking if you have any essentially legal reason for why you are not are qualify as a possible danger to American society. They're just grabbing anybody that they feel fits the grouping, that the racial stereotype, or or a particular racial subset that they want out. And we're seeing this happen all over the country. We're seeing one of our cities in Minnesota. We're seeing Minneapolis get just constantly having to put up a fight against our own government's forces to protect its own citizens. I mean, its own community. It's the type of thing that if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would have told you would be impossible. Maybe not impossible, because we still had detention camps at that point, but I would have said the likelihood was slim. I would not have ever seen this coming exactly in the way that it has come, in the way that it is now. So we have this really governmentally supported push to highlight a very specific group of people. This whole idea of saving white people from being overrun by people of color. And every little chip that makes that easier is very frustrating. Every time characters of color get washed out or forgotten or replaced, it's very frustrating. Now, with Emerald Fennel's Wuthering Heights, the film is very odd in that it doesn't cast the one character who is of color in the film with an actor of color, but it casts other characters who are purposely white, because that really helps that informs why they are racist and bigoted towards Heathcliff as characters of color. They also cast the family, some of the characters who are in the book purposely blonde and blue-eyed, which is again supposed to illustrate the struggles of race and class and the ways that certain racial identities and certain racial presentations are highlighted and celebrated above others. They purposely put characters of color in that position, which completely removes the point. So I'm going to do a quick little kind of talk about what Wuthering Heights is actually about. And I promise I will be fast this time. I know I can get quite meandering with these things. But it's important to understand the context. So this book is set in like 1801, and we're from the get-go, the entire book is unreliable narrator after unreliable narrator recounting a history of two houses and two families that reside in those houses in an isolated area of England that is quite harsh on an environmental level. The moors of England. It's cold, it's windy, it's rainy, there's very little sun, and it's not an easy environment to live in. But you've got two families. You've got the Earnshaws and you have the Lintons. And the Earnshaws live in one house and the Lintons live in the other house. And the story follows a person who is basically having the story of these two families told to him by a maid slash kind of nurse character who was very close to one of the families and the daughter of one of the families, the Earnshaws. So Heathcliff is kind of inserted into this family because one of the families, the Earnshaws, they have two kids. You have Hindley, you have Catherine. And these are the Earnshaws. They have their father. Their mother died, and they live at Wuthering Heights. And the father of the Earnshaws goes on a little trip, is gone for a while, comes back, and he brings with him a small boy. And both of his kids are kid age. They are kids. They're like, ooh, yes, Googie. So he brings this kid home, and the kid is specifically described as a Romani kid, or could be Spanish, or could be what is called Lascar, which is not a, I don't know, I don't think it's a positive term. I'm hesitant I feel off about saying it to begin with, but it's supposed to refer to somebody who is either Black or mixed race, African diaspora. And this small kid is, in the book presented to have been treated well by the father of the family of the Earnshaws and treated horribly by the eldest son, Hindley, and becomes instantly or very quickly attached to the daughter of the Earnshaws. That is Catherine. So you have Catherine, and then you have that small boy is Heathcliff. Heathcliff gets thrust into this family. All you know about him is that he was taken from the streets of Liverpool, which was a huge slave port at the time. Now, the story is set in 1801. In 1801, the Romani were still fully enslaved and were traded all over the world. So it is the possibility that Heathcliff was a enslaved child is very high. The possibility that he was taken from his family and left by either people who bought him, or by a family, or by like a white family, or by there's so many different ways that he could have been separated from his community, especially if he had a Roma community, and brought to Liverpool. Now, the Roma have lived in England for a very long time. We actually have a vista in England called the Romancal, and they're a Romani community. So it's also very possible he's Romancal and he didn't have to travel over he was possibly, his family may have already been there, but in any way he was possibly separated from them. And we don't know if there was any consent involved in that. We don't know anything other than he was left on the streets of Liverpool. Some white guy decided that he liked this small child and was like, I'm going to take you home like you're a lost puppy to entertain my children. And then unintentionally decided that he really cared about the kid. And so Heathcliff grows up being loved by his adopted father. And oh yes, Gogi, what's up? Yes. Nightwing, yes. So yes. After his family died. Because I'm going to give some more context as well into regards to certain ways that may be hinting to a person's either connection to Romani culture or Romani ethnicity. Gogi, I see the connections you're making. Yes. So there is I could see where you're going with this, where both Dick Grayson from Batman, who becomes Nightwing, is a ward who was taken after his parents died tragically in an accident, and by a wealthy billionaire who feels bad for this kid, basically removes him from his family and his connections there. I don't remember with Dick Grayson's story what happened to his community. Yeah. And then he gets renamed. So one thing, and I think this is actually, I can actually attest to this as well, because as an adopted child, I had a name. My name was changed. I don't know who named me, but I think it might have been my birth mother. And then my last name, I don't know where that came from. It may have been given either by the orphanage. There's a lot of don't knows there, but we can get into that in a minute. But yes, this is actually a pretty common pattern where Romani children are separated from Romani communities and given to non-Roma communities and families in order to essentially separate them from their Romaniness and also to encourage their assimilation into non-Romani society. I'm wondering if I should say it. That's a good question, Brent. I don't even give my full name on this either, so I'm kind of like hesitant. I want to tell you, but I'm also like a little nervous to give my full name out, even though it's not like, I have to think about that. But Brant, I will, once I've let myself sit on that for a second, I will be able to tell you once I sit on it. Okay. Thank you. Oh, okay. Thanks. Yeah. When you would just have those moments where you're like, should I not? Anyways. Okay. So, yes. But either way, it was definitely different from what my name ended up being. And it's a pretty common practice. I also want to speak to this as well, is that like, in terms of how Heathcliff came to the Earnshaw's family in Wuthering Heights, it is to this day, a very common practice for, especially in Eastern Europe. I can't speak to non-Eastern Europe. Thank you, Cookie. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. um, that it is a pretty common practice for Romani children to be separated from their parents, oftentimes without the parents' consent. Social workers may come to a Romani community, pick children that they think would be easiest to integrate into a non-Romani community, and their parents don't really get to choose if they keep their kids or not, because they may get put in jail. And it's very easy to put Romani people in that space, because of the fact that a lot of Romani people are excluded from traditional medicinal care. So going to a hospital is quite dangerous if you're a Romani person. So going to have your baby in a hospital, if you're a Romani person, can lead to your death. There have been cases even very recently of Romani women who had complications during their birth or went to have their children in a hospital to ensure that they had the best care, and they were left for hours and hours and hours in situations that could cause them severe issues, sent home even when they had sepsis, and were experienced extreme racial prejudice and what I would term hate crimes, just for trying to get care at a hospital, because of how ingrained the sentiment of Romani people as being thieves, dangerous, dirty. Get that one a lot. Yes, Gogi, actually, yes. And that's the thing. When it comes to Romani people, and again, Heathcliff, the reason that it is easy, I think, for a lot of people to discount our existence is because for our own survival and without our consent, a lot of times we were bred with other people. So there were definitely like a shift in our skin color, in our hair color, in our eye color. We didn't really always get a choice about that. Fortunately, of course, there are families who absolutely did, but there's a history of it not being the case. When you're an enslaved person, you can't consent. So, and we were bought and sold a lot. So that for generations, for about 500 years. And you know who bought us the most? Churches and monasteries. One of the first recorded cases of a Roma people being bought was by a monastery in Romania who bought 40 families. And that was in the 1300s. So anyways, back to Heathcliff, back to this whole case of like adoption and stuff. It's definitely not uncommon for families to be separated. Hey Riley, hello. I do actually have a cousin who is working on starting a foundation to help connect Romani children who were separated. Ellie, I know, Brant, I know. Romani children who were separated from their communities to find their families after they were kind of put into adoption without consent from their families all the time, and to at least try and find out where they came from and what happened and why, because it's still prevalent practice. We have also been sterilized many times throughout history. So anyways, back to Heathcliff, back to Wuthering Heights. So we've got the Earnshaws. We've got Papa Earnshaw, Hindley, the eldest, Catherine Earnshaw, and Heathcliff, the newly adopted child who is of indeterminate race, but very possibly Romani, very possibly, at the very least, person of color. Hi, Aqua. Hello. No way. I would not guess, Gogi, actually. But yes, so you've got this family. This is the Earnshaws. They live at Wuthering Heights. They have their maid, Nellie. Nellie is the person who is telling the story in the book. And she is in the book a white character. In the movie, she is portrayed by a Hung Chow, who is not a white character, not a white person. Oh, well, okay. And she has definitely in the book a initial repulsion to Heathcliff. She tries to find comfort or warmth in her heart for this new child who's been separated from everything he knows and struggles because he's of color. And so he's put into this white family with no connection to his heritage, no connection to his language, no connection. You don't know what language he speaks originally, no connection to anybody that he knows. And he pretty deeply falls in love with Kathy, who is his adopted sister. And also has, to some positive degree, a fatherly relationship with Papa Earnshaw. But Hindley, the oldest son, not about it, not a fan, does not like him, very annoyed, lots of racist expectations, very frustrated, and he really does exert his frustrations on a physical level at Heathcliff when he can. And then you have at Thrushcross Grange, the other house, you have the Lintons. The Lintons, you have Edgar Linton, who is a son who is the same age as Hindley. You have approximate ages as Hindley. You have Isabella Linton, who is approximate same age as Catherine. And you have their kind of servants and support staff. Thrushcross Grange is wealthier. The Lintons are also blonde and blue-eyed, whereas the Earnshaws have dark hair and dark eyes, but they're still white. And this is important in the entire setting of the story because the Thrushcross Grange is viewed as the wealthier space, the kind of more ideal environment due to the blonde, blue-eyed families' wealth and also their nobility. They are nobility, whereas Wuthering Heights and the Earnshaws are not. So there's another class divide here that's pretty important. So you have Kathy and Heathcliff become very close to each other. They don't really have many other people to engage with, to connect to in this very lonely environment that they're in this isolated part of the country. And so they become very, very close. They develop a very intense relationship. And as Heathcliff is growing up, he's not experiencing positive validation or kindness from anyone but Kathy. Papa Earnshaw does pass away, and once he passes away, Hindley, the eldest son, has full range of Wuthering Heights. It goes very badly for Heathcliff, but Heathcliff sticks around so he can be close to Kathy. They have a tempestuous relationship. Heathcliff struggles with the abuse that he's experienced, struggles with being racially othered at all times, struggles with his identity, and also struggles with the fact that Kathy as a character is she's portrayed as selfish and wild because she is I think, opinionated young woman who doesn't fall into conventional meek standards of femininity that were just heavily expected at the time. So you kind of have these two characters who are both don't fully fit into the environments they're in. One, Kathy, is able to is at the very least still higher in social class than Heathcliff. And eventually Kathy has to make a choice because Edgar Linton, who is from the wealthier space, wealthier environment, uh, offers to get married to her. And she has this back and forth with Heathcliff, what should you do? And, he's getting abused by Hindley. There's a lot that goes on, but I'm doing as brief of an explanation as I can. And she's torn, but remind everybody, these are teenagers. So there's this like really seminal conversation that happens where Kathy is speaking to her maid Nellie about Heathcliff and about Edgar and what she should do. And she loves Edgar because he can give her a wealthy, comfortable life. And he's a nice guy, relatively. He doesn't actively encourage the abuse of Heathcliff, but he doesn't really care either way. He is very much of his station, of his time, as a person of the landed gentry and from a wealthier environment. And she loves Heathcliff because she has a very intense bond with Heathcliff that is, I don't even know what you would qualify that as, if it's actual love or something insidious, because almost like a trauma bond. Because both Kathy and Lee didn't experience the love from Papa Earnshaw that Heathcliff did. So there's definitely like all these dynamics, all these nuances, all these things at play all at once. Hello, Griffin. Hello. How are you? We're talking about Heathcliff and Wuthering Heights and the casting of Jacob Elordi. And I'm kind of talking right now through the very quick, very, very spark notes sort of breakdown of the book in of itself and what the novel actually had, like the storyline is. So then you've got this really important conversation that happens that Kathy is having with Nellie the maid, and Heathcliff is hiding and overhearing, where Kathy talks about how being with Heathcliff would debase her because he's of color, because he has no family to speak of who are officially his family, because he is poor. Whereas if she married Edgar Linton from the wealthy, noble family across the way, she would have financial security for life. She would be part of the nobility. She would have a loving husband. It would, it seems like all good. But she also knows that if she does that, Heathcliff might get cast out unless she can encourage her new husband to keep Heathcliff at Wuthering Heights. Because, again, you've got class distinctions, you've got racial distinctions, you've got financial distinctions. And so Heathcliff only hears the part where Kathy says that being with him would debase her. And so he gets on a horse and he runs away in the middle of the rain. And nobody sees him for 3 years. Now, the rest of the conversation that the maid hears, but Heathcliff doesn't, is Catherine still loves Heathcliff deeply, and she's willing to marry Edgar if it means that she can protect Heathcliff. Because in their particular structure of inheritance and social structure, she would have the power to do that if she was married to a wealthy man who would then also have power over the house that she currently lives in, because he would get access to these things from marrying her, because marriage was a contract more than it was about love. So she has this idea that I'll marry Edgar, I'll have a nice life, and I will also protect Heathcliff. Win-win. But also sad because then I don't get to be with Heathcliff from Kathy's perspective. And she also utters the famous line, I am Heathcliff, because she loves him, and also she supposedly understands him in a way that others don't. And it leads to a very tragic situation because Heathcliff disappears for 3 years. In those 3 years, Kathy marries the Edgar Linton, the eldest son. Oh, Gogi, oh, that's so sweet. I hope the possum is okay. But yes, Heathcliff disappears for 3 years and comes back a wealthy man. Kathy, in the meantime, has married. She is pregnant. She loves her husband, and it seems like, seems things are fine. But then Heathcliff comes back, and immediately it's like all of those feelings are back in full force, and she's struggling intensely about her love for Heathcliff while at war with her responsibilities to her new family. And it's very sad. Um, and she kind of gets in this difficult situation because Heathcliff now somehow has a bunch of money, and he uses that money to essentially take ownership of Wuthering Heights, the house, from Hindley, Catherine's brother, who has fallen into gambling and debt after the death of his wife, now that they're relatively grown up, and is all types of sad, and kind of gets back at Hindley for the abuse he suffered as a child from Hindley. And then this is the part that they always leave out, is what happens in this. There's so much more that happens in this next part of Wuthering Heights, but they focus instead on Kathy and Heathcliff's relationship. Now it kind of comes to a head because the novel is actually technically split into 2 parts. With part 1, because Kathy ends up, revealing her feelings for Heathcliff after a lot of back and forth, a lot of tension, and Heathcliff does some gross stuff where he purposely seduces to make Kathy jealous, purposely seduces Isabella Linton, who is the sister of Kathy's husband, gets married to her, treats her horribly. But he does that all to make Catherine jealous. And then Catherine ends up giving birth and dying in birth at the age of 18. She's 18. They're so young. They're teenagers. They're babies. They're practically children. And they're going through all of this intense stuff. So that's just like the first part of the novel. The next part of the novel, Heathcliff is a horrible person. He's horrifically abusive to everybody. He is abusive to the woman that he married just to make Kathy jealous. He's abusive to the son that he has with that woman. He's abusive to Kathy's daughter, who survives her. He's abusive to everybody. And in the 3 years that had passed while he was gone, it was alleged that he may have dealt in criminal trades. So again, let's get back to the concept of like, if Heathcliff is Romani, which a lot of these like little clues about him as a character could indicate stereotypes of Romani people at the time. I could see that. Could definitely see that, where they would assume that he would have some type of inherent sense of evil for how to use criminal elements to make money really quickly, because Romani people apparently just know how to do those things and choose not to. I don't know. But there's also the possibility that he may have gotten himself involved in the slave trade, which would be a choice. Yeah, exactly, Ellie. So this is another reason that in Emerald Fennel's adaption, she has Heathcliff and Kathy being portrayed by actors who are in their late 20s and their 30s. And portraying them as if they are also in their late 20s and their 30s. Now, I think it's great to have characters aged up if they are portraying really, really, really adult things, because I don't really feel like it's a great thing to have children as actors, have to consent to going through those traumatizing things for a movie. That's a conversation we can have actually in the future as well. But because I think she had aged up those actors, I posit that she might have felt comfortable then restructuring the entire story into this steamy romance where now that Heathcliff is an adult, and again, once he comes back after those 3 years, he has all this secret money we don't know where it comes from. He mentally tortures Henley to death, using gambling, debt, and alcohol, and takes control of Wuthering Heights. He physically abuses the woman that he gets married to. And in the movie, they portray it as this weird, very oddly, they portray it instead of as a character who has gone through extreme abuse, separation, generational trauma, and was rejected by to his understanding, by the only person who seemed to ever care about him or love him with the intensity of like a teenage love, for being too low in class. He then, in this movie, is portrayed as taking his, seducing his wife to be, and then getting into a kind of BDSM kink relationship with her, where he literally has her tied up to the fireplace and barking like a dog. Now, I will say I could kind of maybe in some sort of like edgy revenge fantasy, maybe see why, if Heathcliff was actually portrayed by a person of color, there could be some type of commentary being made by taking a wealthy, noble white woman who benefited from colonization, possibly the colonization of his own people, and was able to have that dynamic. I could maybe see that. I could maybe, I don't know. I still don't like I'm not ever going to be a fan of the lack of consent. But also the Emerald Fennel took all of the components that could have provided the nuance for any of the decisions that the characters in her film make, and removed them because she actively wanted to remove race and class as a major division. She threw in characters, like actors of color, into positions where they actively, their lack of melanin was a huge reason those characters were presented in the way they were in the novel, and then kind of just missed the opportunity, I should say, to create an adaptation that would have allowed a really healthy dialogue about inheritance, about race, about tension, social tension, about generational trauma, about the long-term effects of abuse, about having imperfect characters. There's so many things that she could have done, but it's Emerald Fennel. And Emerald Fennel says her interviews about the entire movie say a lot, because in the interviews that she gave at the premiere of the film, she said, and even leading up to it, she said that she made Wuthering Heights into a film adaptation based on her reading of the book as a 14-year-old. Now, what she didn't seem to realize she was doing with that was she was making it quite easy to show how her understanding, despite how many times Heathcliff is portrayed as a character of color, is yes, Ellie, is she just assumes he's white because she thought he was attractive, because she read it as a tragic romance with a lot of romantic tension, when in fact it's not actually a very romantic book at all. It's quite painful. It's detailed depictions of abuse and using financial abuse and misogyny and just, overt racism, all these things. She just missed it because she didn't like it. She didn't want it. So she was like, meh. Heathcliff, Catherine, now kiss. Like, that's what she wanted. And that's what she made. And then she also kind of used the character of Heathcliff as the sexual outlet for the female characters in the story, specifically Isabella and Catherine. And oh yeah, Ellie, that's a great way of saying it. I like it. Nice. But yeah, so I wanted to kind of come at this from looking at this adaptation, from the perspective of somebody who is a Romani person. I find it egregious to begin with that, it didn't have to be a Romani character or a Romani actor who portrayed Heathcliff. Because as much as I feel like there are a lot of indications that Heathcliff could easily be Roma, I also fully understand that it's possible that he isn't. Now, I do want to actually bring your attention to something. So there's this, I think, important important perspective that we also need to have, is that I am one person in an entire community. So while I might be comfortable with the fact that it may be more open-ended that Heathcliff isn't Roma, there are people who are very profoundly Roma who don't believe that and who feel like there are a lot of indicators for why he is. So what I'm doing is showing you a website that really goes through this. And again, as I said, there are Roma communities of people who have fully taken that word and don't find it to be, they've reclaimed it. So I just want to recognize that even if a Roma person says that, it's still not something I will say comfortably. But Roma people are not a monolith, so there are those who can feel comfortable using that word. But okay, so here they kind of detail using what is written in the what is written in the book as for why Heathcliff could be Roma. Oh wait, can you all see this? Is it showing up for you? I'm not sure if you can see it, but let me know. Oh, it didn't show up. Okay. Oh, man. There we go. That's why it wasn't working. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to do it this way. Cool. I was a little sad there for a minute, but here we go. Okay, so can I scroll? Oh man, okay. It's not fully letting me move around, but here we go. It's we're learning as we go. So this is a website that is done by a Romani person, and it goes into depth about why Heathcliff is Romani, and it's using very specific evidence from the book itself to describe the why. And I think that, again, for anybody who especially has grown up within the community, I would actually want to highlight their voices over mine by a lot, because growing up within a Romani community is very different from being separated from it. And so I definitely still want to highlight what they're saying here. So here they're kind of highlighting how Heathcliff is described very specifically as a Romani person. Now, for some reason, I cannot scroll, and I don't know why. Let me see. What if I do this? It doesn't move, does it? Okay. Let me see. If it does move. Okay, cool. That's good to know. I'm learning things. Here we go. Okay, cool. All right, here we go. So another thing is that they do even kind of describe him as if he was from East Asia or South Asia, just because they don't know what he is. And this, I think, is important because what it does is it helps establish how... There we go. This is basically what I've been saying this whole life. Okay. And also, the part I highlighted says, yes, because of the fact that we were enslaved, trafficked, and forcibly separated, we had to learn how to survive by blending, hiding, or assimilating just enough to avoid, as they put it, the rope or the ship, which means being forcibly moved, or, I feel like that's self-explanatory. And then, so that it makes sense that by the time that Emily Brontë was writing Wuthering Heights, she would be very much aware of Romani people, because especially being in Yorkshire, in an area that is a little bit more isolated, you probably would have a healthy amount of movement from Romani people who are trying to find safe paths of travel, where they'd be less likely to encounter oppression from the local communities. Okay, so they also did travel, so they would have definitely encountered Romani people. And her sisters also reference in their books Romani spaces, so they definitely are not unaware. But this is something that I think was, for me, very important. Okay, so when it comes to the way that Heathcliff is represented, he has all of these core points about who he is and how he's represented to the other members of the household he grows up in, and also why he's not allowed to assimilate, and why he's not allowed to be seen as an equal, and why it's okay for everybody to treat him as less than human. And in a way, it's kind of a microcosm of how many Romani people and communities are treated all over the world. I think that the big difference is Heathcliff is able, in the book, to strike back in quite cruel ways, whereas Romani people, if we try to strike back in the way that, say, Heathcliff has, we would be obliterated. Even without us doing anything, we are often treated very badly. People, it is, even, earlier this year, there were especially, I think even more in Eastern Europe, but it happens all over Europe, all over the country, all over the world. If a Romani person is accused of a crime while interacting with a non-Romani person, often their entire community will suffer. Mobs will form. They will attack the communities, the Romani communities, firebomb their homes, even when there are small children inside. There was a case of a Romani man who was accused of cheating at cards, and his whole community was firebombed. So the reaction that we get is often far outweighs anything that we do. So I think it's important to have this conversation because of the fact that this is so prevalent to the stereotypes of Romani otherness, but also so important to how difficult it is to exist as a Romani person in non-Romani spaces, if you can't blend in, or even if you can in any way, shape, or form, like get your foot in the door, being able to be accepted, being able to be taken seriously, being able to access, government services, healthcare, education, it's very hard. So you're often left in spaces where you are constantly trying to um, attain balance. Um, but not only that, there are, of course, many, 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 many Romani communities that have been able to thrive beautifully, but it has required very strict rules about how and to overcome incredible amounts of racism. So it is not easy. But yes, and I really appreciate this website for all. I will definitely link this at the bottom of my video. In the description section. So if you want to explore any of this, please feel free. There may be a lot more on this website as well that might be very, very helpful for explaining other components of Romani culture. But yes, so that is in relation to why there is a pretty sincere belief that Heathcliff is Romani. But I also kind of want to talk about another thing when it comes to presentation of characters, when you've got racially ambiguous characters, because I think a lot of times we as general public really don't know what to do with communities of racially ambiguous people. I know that from personal experience, I have been associated with all of these different races that I'm not, which I don't take offense to. I think I'm very honored that anybody could assume me to be of whichever race they're assuming me to be of. But it also means that my own is constantly erased. Most of the time, the first comment I get from people who don't know me is, "Are you Mexican?" And I no, but thank you. It's just I'm not. It's so I kind of can't do anything with that. But I also think it's important because it means that we are, as a community, and not just me as a Romani person, but also other ethnically ambiguous people, especially, if there's a huge amount of people who are mixed race and people probably can't figure out what race they are just by looking. Because, mm, Ellie, yes, exactly. And there's also people who are mixed with multiple races on both sides. So that can mean that like identifiable features are hard to classify. And there's a lot of frustration for others when it comes to that. I get exoticized really, really quickly. And I have been since I was a small child. One of the earliest things I can ever remember being told by others is, "What are you? Like, what are you?" And then, "You're so exotic." And it's just like, uh, thanks. Because I can lose and gain melanin really quickly. You put me out in the sun long enough, and it's very obvious. But I had a period of time when I was trying really hard to fit in, really, really hard to attain white standards of beauty, where I would never let myself go outside. I would purposely wear a foundation that was very light, and I bleached my hair blonde, and I would wear blue eye contacts. And people could still tell something about me was off, but they didn't know what. And so they were intrigued. And so then I was heavily sexualized, because it became more socially acceptable to see me, especially at that age. I was very young. But to see me and to, I guess, find me attractive at that point, without as many of the social struggles of being attracted to somebody who is if you're not the same race, or if there's, or if you have like, that fear fetishization. A lot of people, especially when you are ethnically ambiguous, can feel a little bit more comfortable with being attracted to you, or with dehumanizing you because they're not sure what you are. So they don't have to feel immediately guilty. Yes, exactly. Exactly, Gogi. And I mean, I have had people who thought that I was tanning, like spray tanning myself. I've had people who thought I was bleaching my skin based on what time of year it was. I've also had people literally grab me and try and rub my skin off because they're like, "You're covered in dirt." And that's just my skin. Like, it's just what I am. But that is, to me, kind of also a hallmark of what it is to be of an ethnicity that has been forced to survive for so long without a home base that is a country. We have done, I think, incredibly well, considering how few legal repercussions we have, how few support systems we have. We were the second most I don't know how else to say this, but attacked, obliterated community in World War II, next to the Jewish populations of Europe. We were the prized experiment group for Joseph Mengele. So, because people cared about us even less. And we didn't have any kind of support system after these mass genocides take place. We didn't have legal support or reparations. A lot of people denied that we had ever been affected at all. So there's a really long history that is going into this experience of erasure that is also then getting kind of like, in a pretty limited way, getting personified by, once again, being erased from a Hollywood movie that is one of the few characters that you could easily cast a Romani actor. Or at the very least, you could have cast Shazad Latif. He was right there. He was right there. Right there. I mean, if you had bleached Jacob Elordi's hair and made him blonde and put some blue eye contacts in there, if you needed to have Jacob Elordi in there, make him Edgar. Make him Edgar. The whole point is that he is a white man who is blonde and blue-eyed in the novel, Edgar Linton, and he's no nobility, and he's also supposed to be a physical representation of wealth and class and good breeding, whereas Heathcliff is the physical representation of no wealth, no class, and terrible breeding. Yes. Exactly. So, as Googie said, it's not that Jacob Elordi did anything wrong by accepting this role. It's also not wrong. He's an incredible actor. He's an incredible actor. I saw him in Frankenstein. I was amazed. I love that movie. That's probably my favorite movie of 2025. There's another situation where the characters were aged up quite a lot, but it made sense. It worked because of the angle that they took in that particular movie. Now, even the way that they shifted the racial dynamics by having Oscar Isaac play Frankenstein, it still was not taking away from the core important component of that conversation that Frankenstein was having. So not to say that there aren't critiques about, like, again, a space of the person who is the mad inventor who is committing crimes against humanity by creating the creature being a person of color. Well, the brother, who is this perfect blonde, blue-eyed person, would have technically made more sense if you're being properly adapting that novel. With Frankenstein, I totally respect those critiques, but I did really like that movie. I thought it was well done. I thought Oscar Isaac did a great job. But yes. Thank you, Ellie. Thank you. That's really sweet. But I think erasure is also important because what we forget is how consistently it happens. For example, Rosalia she's a singer from Spain. She does kind of like a flamenco inspired pop, although she does also kind of, I think, assert herself as a flamenco performer. Oh no, it's okay. It's okay, Googie. It's totally okay. What's Digital Circus? Am I gonna crash out if I find out? But anyways, I will ask you about that after. Erasure. Oh, okay. So there is Rosalia. That's it. There is a lot of, actually, with flamenco is another example of something that the Roma had a huge amount of influence in creating, because it takes traditional dance that was common in the area of India that we came from, and we have held on to for generations and generations, and brought it to Spain, and then integrated it with traditional Spanish dance. And we integrated like we integrated Indian and Romani musical instruments, practice, singing styles with Spanish singing styles, and it created flamenco. Rosalia actively avoids that, does not acknowledge that. She asserts it is a wholly Spanish invention, has nothing to do with Romani people. And recently, which is so infuriating because it's such a core part of the vista of Romani people who live in Spain and have lived there for a long time and have integrated into the country so well, have thriving communities, super active in arts and music and everything. But also in flamenco, there is a particular language that you can sing in called Cale. And Cale is actually, that's what Roma who are Spanish Roma are called, is Calo. Cale. And or the kale, depending on which one. Anyways. Ellie, thank you so much. That's so sweet. Oh my gosh. Anyways, so there's this very specific language that is actually Romanes, which is Romani language, which is Sanskrit mixed with all the different languages that we have picked up along the way. So it's a very specific language. There's different, and we've it's definitely something that has multiple dialects. It's a whole beautiful thing to go into. We could dive into a whole thing about Romani languages, but in Spain, the Romani were actively harmed. Our language was criminalized. So if we spoke it, if we were heard speaking it, we could be immediately jailed. So what the Romani did is they learned to speak their language with enough integration of Spanish words and Spanish grammatical style to avoid detection for the average passerby. And we were able to hold on to our language that way and not lose it completely. And it, of course, became foundational in flamenco because Romani people had so much to do with flamenco. So Rosalia decided a few weeks ago to sing in Cali while denying our involvement in flamenco whatsoever. So it's just another experience of essentially being othered, being forgotten, being erased, and being forced to blend until we disappear. Without, I mean, yeah. I have a final thing I kind of want to show everybody, which is what I know I've talked about it before, but it's this film that's on YouTube. You can watch it for free. And it's by Tony Gatliff, I think. It's by this amazing Romani creator who's a director who's created all these really fantastic films about. Oh, wait. Take it back. Who created all these amazing films. And it's actually a film that follows the path of Romani people from India all through the different countries that we ended up in. And it's wild when you look at Romani people from where we started, where there are still Romani people there in India, to where the film kind of ends, because this film was done in the late 80s, early 90s. And it's done entirely through music. There's almost no spoken dialogue in the film. And it just follows us as we've traveled, our ancestors as we traveled through song. It's beautiful. It's really well done. But I wanted to show you an example of what we look like at the beginning and what we look like at the end, to give a little bit more, again, of that kind of commentary on what it means to be a ethnic minority that is forced into nomadicism and assimilation when required for survival. So let me see. Let me show you. There we go. Okay. There we go. All right. So let's go. Let me know if you can hear it. And
spring, the unofficial new year for tool people.
Getting ads.
New jobs, new projects.
There you go. So here's how we started. And here's where we end up in like the late 80s, early 90s. She's actually that person who was presented there is a very famous called Gitana singer, who's a flamenco singer. And as you can see, through all these decades, I mean, they really tracked all of it from this to, oh my gosh. To this, to living in the snowy, I don't even know where this is. I mean, we're all over the place. But that's how we would travel around, and hold on to ourselves. So as you can see, our complexions are changing. We're still recognizable, but we had to adapt. And you can see some things that stay the same. But Aha, okay, I'm back. I think I really, again, highly encourage you to watch that film in its entirety. It's only like an hour, and it's really good. It's really good. But it's also kind of wild because once you see that, then you start recognizing, oh, that makes sense. There's a very distinctive, I guess you could say, a pattern when it comes to people who are Romani that you could probably point out, if you know. But it's also very clear how we had to shift and change over time to survive. So by the time you get to Emerald Fennel and Wuthering Heights, and you see Jacob Elordi getting cast, it's just so frustrating, because even though we've been around for such a long time, our relevance in media is rarely ever presented as anything but an exoticized fairy tale or as a threatening presence. And with Heathcliff, is he the character that I wish was representing us as a community? No. No, he's not. In the book, he's not a nice man. He is a cruel person who is definitely encouraged into that through extensive amounts of abuse. But we also deserve to be human, and not every person who is able to survive abuse comes out the kindest. So I guess at the end of the day, it's not as much about, is Heathcliff the character we want to be our representation, versus should we have proper representation in some of the few places where we're actually acknowledged to exist at all. I think it would be great if we had better representation of us. We're a vastly nuanced community and ethnic minority that has survived for generations upon generations upon generations, by recognizing when to be pragmatic about surviving and when to involve oneself in the external world and when to withdraw. And to the degree that we've had to, isolation has been one of the primary ways to maintain our identities and ourselves as a community, as a race. But it also leads to making it very easy, I think, for other non-Romani people to project whatever they want onto us. So, okay. I think that at the end of the day, when it comes to Heathcliff, it doesn't have to matter if he's Romani or not, but it does matter that he's portrayed correctly. So that's my final thought there. Oops. And I wanted to thank everybody so much for coming in tonight and having this really kind of long conversation with me. I know it's a little meandering. We got into a lot of different things, but that's cool. I love doing that. And I'm glad that we were able to connect on so many different components. I definitely am seeing the interest in, oh no. Aw, Ellie, that's so sweet. I just saw the Discord notification. Thank you so much. That's so sweet. Maybe I should get some green eye contacts. Oh, Brant, thank you so much. Well, you know what? I am going to include there's a bunch of Romani creators, actors, musicians, filmmakers that make some really, really good stuff. And I would love to direct you to it. Also, if you want to learn more about, I guess, us as a people and some of our history, I highly recommend. There's going to be so many things. I will put them in the description. There's Instagram accounts that are really helpful. If you are ever unsure, there's always the ERRIAC. And yes, I have some. I just haven't worn them in for a long time. But yes, okay, anyways. Oh no, my notifications are going off again. Okay, so I just want to again appreciate everybody for being here, and I will leave links in the description for the things that I referenced during today's live. There was more stuff that I was going to get to that I just didn't get to, but that is totally fine. And then also for resources, if you're curious about more information when it comes to Roma history and modern Roma storytellers. There are so many that are amazing, and I highly recommend you check them out. But yeah, also, I would actually encourage you to read Wuthering Heights itself. It is a good book. Is it my favorite? No. Not by far. But I still think that it asks very important questions. And when you get to see the source material, it really helps give perspective on why it can be so egregious when somebody chooses to basically create a steamy rom-com fantasy using characters that are from I guess you could say a highly revered piece of literature or media. But okay, all right. I just know I'm never going to watch any of Emerald Fennel's work in the future because I can't say she's made anything that I've been impressed by or shown herself to really be able to present race, class, or those types of social dynamics effectively without erasing very important conversations. So, okay. Thank you everybody so much for tuning in. I will see you all again on Sunday. I did see that there were some requests in the Discord for particular topics. If you have any requests for topics for future lives or future videos, because I am going to start making YouTube videos that are separate, I would love to know. Drop it in the topics for stream in the Discord. If you're not already part of my Discord, please join my Discord. Or leave it in a comment below my YouTube videos. So, all right. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a great, great night. Thank you so much for being here. And, well, goodbye.